Hello and welcome to today's segment of Our Ventura TV. My name is George Alger, and today's topic is about CAPS Media Center, which is where this show is recorded, and more particularly about the founding of this media center. And with me today are some of the founding board members of CAPS. Welcome.
Thank you, George.
Thank you, George.
Yes, we have Jenise Wagar and Ron Halt, and we're going to start with you, Jenise. What is CAPS, for those who might not know?
Well, CAPS actually is an awesome community media center. People may not know what it stands for. It's Community Access Partners of San Buenaventura. So basically, it's a studio where anybody in the community, in the Ventura community, can come in and learn and be producers.
Awesome. And Ron, let's get to how this even came about. So let's talk about the starting of CAPS Media.
Well, cable television, in order to go into your living room, has to have a franchise. And the city of Ventura was in charge of issuing franchises in the early years. Now, in the early years, in the 80s and 90s, the cable companies just said, we'd like a franchise, and they had a franchise. But as things moved along, the city said, we want a little bit more for our people, and made some major requests. And at that point where the city hired some people to help, and Denise can probably tell us about that.
Yeah, one of my duties when I was at the city of Ventura was to manage the cable franchises agreements. And basically, people may not even know what a cable franchise agreement is. I think it's important to point out, anytime any business wants to use a city right away, they have to be granted a franchise agreement. So basically, the city's saying to a company, yeah, you can use our public right away, but with some very innovative thinking and city leadership at the time, we felt like for our residents, we wanted to get something back for them. And the law at the time allowed for us to be able to assess fees to help build community access and to build CAPS. So there, like I say, there was just awesome leadership and great community leaders like Ron that negotiated for that and were able to get the funding to build CAPS TV.
And what year are we talking about now?
I believe that was probably, what do you think, Ron?
Late 90s.
Late 90s?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you get the funding?
Well, at the point where the funding was to be achieved, it was done, as Jenise said, it was done so that the people, the cable companies, could use the right-of-ways in Ventura. They paid a certain percentage to the city to be used for equipment for a studio, and a certain amount of money for salaries to be paid to employees at the studio. So the city was looking for a nonprofit to run it. And Jenise could tell us how the board was originally selected and set up.
Yeah. Basically, back to the funding issue, Ron and George, what happens is when people pay their cable bills, they're assessed a surcharge. It might show up as a PEG surcharge. The P is public, the E is educational, and the G is government. And at the time, the city and the community were really interested in this whole movement that was going throughout California and the country at the time, which was civic engagement. So it was not just one-way communication, but building mechanisms in your community where people could really engage more. And we felt like video and web and things of that nature were really just kind of starting to take off. So that's one of the things that was really important at the time. So anyway, so when you pay your cable bill, you're assessed a PEG fee, and that is how part of CAPS is funded. And then the other part is the cable franchise fees that the cable companies pay to the city. The city gives a portion of that to CAPS to pay for their operations.
Cool. All right, so now the actual founding of the building itself, it started at an earlier place, didn't it? What didn't start in this building?
No, it started over at about 100 yards from here in an area of the Ventura Community College. And the community college was very, very helpful in helping CAPS get started.
Okay, and this property is still, even though it's a different building, this is still owned by the community college, correct?
Right. One of the things that we did when we were looking at different models is, I was telling Ron, I remember going up to Northern California. They were the leaders at the time in terms of community access centers. And one of my colleagues and I did a road trip. and went and looked at different community media centers to see if this was the model that we wanted to use in Ventura, and we realized it was. Then when we started looking, oh gosh, where could we build this in Ventura, we started looking at what we call institutional partners. Of course, the college was one of those, the Ventura Unified School District, and the county library, and then the city of Ventura. And we looked at some existing real estate in Ventura, thinking, well, maybe we could take the money and retrofit it. And then somebody, I don't remember who, had an idea of, well, let's look at property that some of the partners might have. And where we're sitting today is owned by the college, and the junior college, and wasn't being used. And we negotiated, we being the city, negotiated a really wonderful deal where we only pay $1 a year, I believe, for this land, because it's really a win-win. The college sees it as a win having CAPS TV on their property. It's right across the street from a high school, actually 2 high schools now, because El Camino's next door as well, and Foothills across the street. And we looked at things like bus lines. Was it accessible to transportation? And I remember Larry Calderon at the time was the president of the college, and very much believed in public access and information sharing, and he was extremely instrumental in making this happen.
So we started off with a board, and the board had to do a lot of work. But how do we choose the first board? Because that was crucial. And Jenise, maybe you can tell us how the board of conveners was selected.
Well, we looked at different segments of the community in terms of who would really be good to be on the board, you know, healthcare and education, civic clubs and the like. And then we basically came up with a list and went to the city council, and the city council had to approve the initial board of conveners. And then that board of conveners was tasked with working in conjunction with the city to set up the nonprofit. You know, from filing the paperwork with the state to doing all that, and to starting lease agreements with the college and the like. And then after the board of conveners, then there were elections for board of directors, and then hiring of the first executive director, which was exciting.
Wow. Now, I know in conversations that we've had over the years, you have spoken about the passion that existed, particularly in those early days when things now run pretty smoothly. So it's interesting hearing. Could you touch on that?
Yes, when we were first over in the little room in the community college, things were pretty cramped, and we did what we could to just put a program together. But as we started looking for a design for this building, everybody was involved. We interviewed the architects all the way through to when he gave us the drawings. We interviewed the contractors, and then as they started building this wonderful shell, the board members got their dungarees and jeans on and their sweatshirts, paint, and we rolled the walls. We painted it and did so many things. So we had a lot of sweat equity, and every board could benefit from that kind of involvement.
Yeah. Okay. So in those formative years, all right, as a community access television station could go in a number of directions, or at least could embrace so many different things, how was it guided to how it's come to be today?
Well, I remember we were so excited when we had, one channel. The plan, I think, was always that we would have a public channel, so producers could come in and basically any topic that they wanted. Then we would have an E channel, education, and then G, the government. And throughout the years, as programming started to pick up, at the time I think it was channel 6, right? Was our only channel.
Yes.
Then we added channel 15, which became the city channel. So there was just a lot of excitement about it. There was a lot of new producers coming forward. There were other public agencies that saw the value of it, from the county board of supervisors. We started airing more commission meetings at City of Ventura, and just a lot more interest in the community. And one of the things I like to point out too is, and I remember personally for me, one of the reasons I didn't switch over to satellite was because if you didn't have cable, you wouldn't be able to get CAPS TV, you wouldn't be able to watch those meetings and see all that, I think, community content. So I just like to point out that I think that's really cool, and it's still that way right? I mean, I guess you could stream online, but for me, there's really a lot of value to that and to having cable subscribers so they can watch shows like this.
Definitely. The city and the school districts share, the educational institutions share 15. And I'm sure now the number has changed because once we went digital, things changed. But historically, that's the way it started out.
Good. Do you happen to remember when the first programming was actually broadcast?
Well, Ron and I were talking about this the other day. It's interesting because before this concept came to be, there was still Channel 6. It was run in a very different way. It was actually run out of Avenue TV Cable, I believe, and part of the franchise agreement at the time was they were to broadcast the city council meetings. So that piece was out there. I don't know when that started.
The Johnny George, the owner of Avenue Cable, was a fantastic helpmate to the city of Ventura and to the schools and to the city. I had students who would go into Johnny's studio on Main Street and go in there and make programs when he was managing the public access. He had so many things to do, he couldn't put the time and energy into it he would have loved to have done. But he actually got the program started for public access in Ventura.
Okay. So do we know then around the time that CAPS Media started broadcasting on Channel 6?
I think that was probably maybe 2002. What do you think?
Well, I think it was earlier than
earlier?
that because when we received the franchise, there would have been a void with nothing going out.
Well, from what I remember, the city at the time, we actually hired on staff production assistants. And they were running the system from City Hall to keep the public meetings going. So there was a little bit of a gap. I think it gave us time to get the board of conveners together and to hire the staff and kind of transition that
Interview and
over to a nonprofit. So early 2000s.
Early 2000s. Sounds good.
All right, so right around the turn of the century, actually.
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, so we're just about out of time here.
Okay.
I'm wondering if there's a summating message that you'd like to convey to the viewers regarding CAPS or regarding the founding of CAPS.
We all have creativity, and our students have fantastic creativity. And if you've got yourself your little iPhone, you've got your little camera, Canon or Sony or whatever, you can, nowadays you got your computer, well, you can come in here and use the big stuff. Or you can bring your own programming in and have it sent out as you've edited it and put it together. So for an extremely small amount, you can become a member of this fantastic organization and be a producer.
Yeah, that's not only a great message, I think it's worth underscoring that this truly is a community asset. And anyone in the community is welcome to come into CAPS and to learn how to use the equipment and make their own programs or make their own programs with their own equipment and still get that distributed through CAPS. All right, well, Jenise, Ron, thank you very much for joining me today.
George, thank you.
Thank you.
This is George Alger signing off for this segment of Our Ventura TV. Until we meet again.